Welcome to another edition of the podcast. I'm your host, the Real Jason Duncan. Thank you for joining in today. I've got a really interesting guest for you today. His name is Lord Milan Oiseau. Lord Milan Oiseau, at age 16, he broke his neck and he was diagnosed as a C4 quadriplegic. Doctors predicted that the guy would never, ever walk again. And we're going to talk about what the accident was and how that happened and how big of a hardship that might have been, and compare that to the crap that we go through. The crap that we go through is probably pales in comparison to what someone at 16 who is active and ready to go and then breaks his neck and is told he's never going to walk again. How do you overcome that? How do you move through the hardships? That's what we're going to be talking about on the show today. Well, defying those odds, Milan embarked on an 18-year journey of determination and faith, and he eventually regained his ability to walk. And during that time, he also earned a master's degree. He traveled the world. He authored 3 books. He launched a successful podcast. He's built 2 companies. And what he attributes his achievements to this thing he calls the day one mindset, which is a framework that he developed, he considers with divine inspiration. When I first met him, he introduced himself as the superhero coach. So I want you to help me welcome Lord Milan to the show. Milan, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It was good to meet you. It was brief, but it was impactful.
Yeah, well, when we go to these events, your network is your net worth, and
Yeah.
my net worth went up going to that event because meeting people like you, and you're not the only one I connected well with that night, and so I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. So, what happened at 16? What was it? Was it a freak accident, car accident, sports accident? What happened?
Well, I was a big athlete at the time. I was running track and playing football, and had some friends that had graduated a little bit ahead of me and were playing football at Michigan State. And I thought, hey, that sounds like a good enough solution to my issues here and future for me. And I grew up in Virginia, and so it was military kid and on the water and everything. But moving to Michigan, like the summer, 2 years after I moved here, my first time at a lake, I dove off the end of the boat dock where the boats were tied up, like I had done plenty of times in Virginia. When in Virginia, it would have been 15 feet if boats were tied up. But at a lake in Michigan, it can be 2 feet. And it turns out where I landed was 3.5 feet. So
Oh,
when I dove in, like a normal dive head first, I ripped my shoulder out of socket and landed on top of my head and crushed my fourth and fifth vertebrae, like they said, like aspirin. And doctors told me I'd never have any feeling or movement after that once I woke up from the surgery. My response was, F that, I have stuff to do. And, here we are.
so 16 years old, just diving in. I remember. I don't know how old I was. I was young. I was probably under 10. And my parents took me camping. We used to go camping a lot as kids. I love to camp now too. And we went to this place called Cedars of Lebanon State Park here in Tennessee. And they had, at the time, they don't anymore, they had an Olympic sized swimming pool with a high dive and 2 mid dives. And it was the first time I'd ever seen a high dive. And as soon as we walked in, I saw, I was on the shallow end of the pool. I saw down there that high dive. And I said to my parents, "Oh, I want to jump off the high dive." And my parents like, we're just walking in, coolers and towels. And I dropped everything and said, "See, I know how to dive." Dove in right there, and the 3 foot hit my head, blood, the whole thing. Praise God, I didn't suffer what you suffered, but it could have been me. Could have been me. So
Yeah.
when you came up out of the water, who was there? Who was witnessed this accident?
Well, I was there with my parents. It was a friend of theirs cabin up north, so it was quite a few people around. And I dove in and I never lost consciousness. And when I hit, I felt that initial grunt. And I'd been hit and knocked out in football, and I thought, I'm just kind of dazed a little bit. I'll shake it off. But I quickly realized, like, wait a second, I can't move here. And I could hear people saying, like, oh, he's just playing, he's doing this, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna freaking drown if you don't come over here. And still, I had no idea that it was as bad as it was. And partly because like the water keeps you buoyant, but yeah, my parents were there, and I remember my dad and some other guy pulled me out of the water, and when they did, they pulled me up. That's when like my head went down, my body came up. So that's when the actual break itself, like all that happened. Thankfully, because God's in the unlikely business, the cabin next door was owned by a neurosurgeon, and he rushed over and helped stabilize me and everything, and got me all set while the paramedics were on the way.
I can't imagine as a parent of kid. I can't imagine as a parent watching my kid go through that. Did your
Yeah.
parents? We're going to talk about how this affected you because that's kind of the key to your story. But from a parent's perspective, did they accept guilt for this? Like we let him do this. Did you go through that watching them kind of say this is our fault? We shouldn't have let you dive, or was that not part of their thought process?
Well, it was definitely like I remember the fear in my dad's face because like I'm sure he felt helpless, like I don't know what to do, you know. And he's a Marine, and he's a tough guy. He knows what to do in a lot of situations, but like those are other people, right? Like, oh, I'm at war, I'm at combat, I know what to do for other people, but like when it's your kid, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And my mom just went right into faith mode. Like I remember hearing her speaking in tongues and touching like from head down to my feet. And I remember laying on the dock and yelling, "Who's touching my butt?" In my mind, they hear my mom yell, "Praise Jesus!" He didn't lose feeling. I don't. She just followed that prompt, right, and just like went right into that mode that she knows.
Yeah.
Um, and that was about it. I was conscious the whole time, like I said, but I couldn't move around to look around. Like right away, it was just like the shock to my system, just lost all movement whatsoever.
Man. Well, so you're kind of the key to what you talk about is that hardships are a precursor to glory. And,
Yeah.
who better to have that perspective than you? But before you gained that perspective, tell me about the time in the hospital and the months and maybe perhaps even years after before that mindset developed of I'm sure you felt pity on yourself, you were sad, maybe depressed, maybe even suicidal. Tell me about how you felt and how your mind worked through the days and the aftermath of this accident.
Well, I mean, being told you'll never have any feeling or movement ever again when you're 17 and an athlete, like athletes are already cocky. 17-year-olds are already cocky, and I was just like the utter like refusal of like, no, like this can't be, right? And it's like a week after my injury, the morphine's already worn off. I'm just laying there in bed, just couldn't sleep, basically an insomniac. Just laying there, couldn't sleep. And next thing I know, Jesus is standing at the foot of my bed. Not usually the story that people have when you're 17 years old. And he said, even in your broken state, if you align your thoughts, words, and actions, then you can create whatever you want. And showed me a painting of like my broken body and said, even in this state, as you are, that's still true. And if you choose to follow me for once, then I'll show you these amazing things. And I was like, what do I got to lose at this point, right? Yes, okay. And from then on, I really realized, okay, if I can't control my physical just yet, I can't control my thoughts and my words about it. And I just decided to just say okay to his words. And, he disappeared. And like a week later, I had feeling head to toe. And I was like, well, huh, that's something. But, I was still in the hospital, still, broken body, still couldn't really do anything. And was in the hospital for almost 6 months. And in that time, it wasn't really pity or depression or any of that. It was more so just anger and constantly thinking like, how can I figure this out? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Of how can I get past this? And I remember the one time that I slipped up and said, I called myself a cripple. I was like, what good is it if I'm just a cripple? And I remember my PT at the time said, don't ever say that about yourself. And like I remember right then I realized like the power of words of how I talk to myself is the thing that's either going to make me or break me with this injury. And in the subsequent years and months afterwards, like I went to college 6 months after I got out of the hospital. I was like,
Wow.
all right, well, what else do I got to do?
Did you graduate high school through just homeschooling and while you're recovering so that you could go to college?
Yes, I was already taking AP classes and like a big athlete, like I said. So I was going to have a short senior year anyway,
Uh,
and had planned on going to college early anyway. I didn't know I was going to go to the local college. I figured I'd go to Michigan State, which is a few hours away. But still, like I had that one class that came to the house, did like my history class and one other class, and then I was just off to Western.
Man. So your faith obviously has played a big part of this. Did you have a strong faith and were you following Jesus before the accident or is this kind of a newfound faith during and through the process of recovery?
It's not a newfound faith. I grew up in the church like most kids in the South. Like everybody's Baptist, right? Everybody goes to church like
That's
Sundays
right.
and Wednesdays. We're in church. Never even said the word "yeah" in front of my grandma. That kind of family. Um, Growing up in the '80s, so it was always there, right? And I knew it was true, and it was worthwhile. However, like you get into your teenage years, you start accepting other things, you start going, other routes, and I actively rejected it that like no like I just want to be like everybody else. I just want to be like everybody else, and I think I struggled.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
I finally got it. It's the brand new Relay credit card. So check it out. I'm gonna do a little unboxing for you so you can check this out. So here we go. Nice little case, kind of like the American Express. They're not playing. They're doing it right. Oh, look at this. There's a quote right inside that says, "Success is having to worry about every damn thing in the world except money." Johnny Cash. That's pretty good. I've not heard that one. Oh, this is nice. A little thing on the back, up to 1.5% cash back, no annual fees or interest, 30-day billing cycle. And there it is. It's the Relay credit card. It's a Visa. So I'm not going to show you my number, but there it is. Look at that. Boom. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/relay.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
A bit with that, partly because of like being biracial and like that whole deal of growing up in the South and wondering like where do I fit in, and then moving to another state all at the same time of trying to figure out my own self and just wanted to fit in. So it was actively rejecting that. But I mean, when everything was gone and everything was quiet and nobody was around, guess who was there? God. And he
Yeah,
showed up and called me by name and said, "Hey, come here." And I said, "Okay." And it started from there.
I love it, man. So this hardship that you went through, you maybe had a moment or two of pity and calling yourself a cripple, going through the process of just mentally dealing with the anguish of it. But it sounds to me like through the whole process, you were determined. You had this determination to move beyond this and not let this define you. Your feeling was eventually gained back in your whole body. You got to be able to walk again. Now, when I met you, you were in a wheelchair. It looks like you're still in that today. Is that just because you don't have enough function in the body, or what's the reason for that, or was it a regression?
No, it's not a regression. It actually took me 18 years to even start walking again.
Oh wow,
So over the last couple of years since I met my girlfriend, now wife, when all that started, which is pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, I'm gaining muscle and it's getting easier, but like my balance and coordination are still kind of off. I'm up to the point now where I can walk a few hundred feet at a time before my body's just exhausted. Um, so a lot of BCAs afterwards and protein powder and creatine these days are a part of my diet. So, but using the chair, it makes things a lot easier to get around. But every day I try to spend some type of time of the day in my standing machine where I can stand up securely without having to worry about the balance and really just strengthening and building those reps.
on the scale of things that entrepreneurs and business owners go through on a daily basis that are setbacks, I would have to think that what you went through physically is close to the top of the list in terms of the worst. Physical ailment, not just something that debilitates you for a specific period of time, but affects the rest of your life. Your motor functions, your ability to stand, walk, run, dive off docks anymore has been diminished severely. I guess, is that what's caused you to be the superhero coach where you're helping people work through hardship to say, look, dude, it ain't as bad as you think on the scale of what could be. I mean,
Yeah.
losing a couple $1,000,000, you can come back from that. Losing your business, you can come back from that. Going through a terrible relationship loss, you can come back from that. I'm assuming that's what you do, but is that where you're coming from now?
Well, I mean, like they say, right? Like the healthy person wants a million things, the unhealthy person wants one. And I've gone through so much physically and still accomplish greatness that it just, like you said, it pales in comparison. I'm like, wait a second, what am I really letting stop me here? And it gives my words a lot more weight. But my words wouldn't mean anything if I didn't have the evidence and the proof that, like, the framework that I teach people actually works. Like, I'm not telling you to be more positive. I'm actually giving my clients a usable framework that's going to work in every situation. And I joke like, hey, I did it all without a body. Like, if your body already works, you better do more than me. You know. So, but
Well,
like that's the high expectations of it all, right?
so when you went to college, what was your intent? What degree did you seek, and what did you think your future was going to hold?
Well, here's the thing. Like, my life, I realized that, like, the hardest thing that I've ever done was not learning to walk again. It was living an authentic life, being an authentic version of Milan. That was the hardest thing to do. Because, like, for the first 17 years of my life, I was just taking the suggestions of other people. Oh, people that look like us do this. People that look like us don't do this. People that are in your situation do this and play. Like, I liked playing sports, but, like, I didn't really care. I had no real plan for my life. So when the injury happened and all that quiet time, I had enough time to actually think about what's authentic for Milan. And I realized that I like three things. I like money, I like clothes, and I like girls. Like, what am I going to do with that? And I ended up going to college with the idea of having a fashion label. Like, all right, like, I like clothes, I like girls. Maybe I'll design clothing, work with women. Bet there's girls all around. That's awesome. And that was the catalyst. That was the first time I really made a real authentic move just for me, and partnered that with the degree in Spanish because I was always drawn to the Spanish language, but never got to the point where I was fluent and wanted to do that. So I had two authentic goals for me, and, like, that's what sparked everything.
So, what degree did you end up pursuing? Was there a specific degree?
Yes, I had my first undergrad degree was in Spanish, the accompanied with another. It was a double major, so I had that in fashion design as well. And then I
Okay.
used that to. I was living and working for Harper's Bazaar magazine, and then I was living in Miami and doing the design work, and then traveling around before I started my first company, which was my own label, and then ran that for 7 years.
So, when did you transition into becoming a coach? When did that happen?
That happened officially about 5 years ago. But, like, even when I was running the clothing company, like, it was an empowerment brand. So it wasn't just clothing for clothing's sake. Like, it was an empowerment ideal behind it, and mission. And I realized that all the worthwhile aspects of my business were really just that, of, like, empowering other people. Like, this advice or this connection that I was making in those conversations, I thought, like, these are really the best part of my day. And I had developed the day one framework, not even calling it that necessarily, for myself. I'm like, Milan, my life is full of problems. Like, how can I be a better version of myself? And started teaching it to a couple of my fraternity brothers to see, like, what's the result for other people? Like, can I even teach this? And they saw tremendous results, like, within like 30 days. And I'm like, huh. And, like, as I'm doing the design thing, I'm, like, having more and more thoughts about just being a coach and selling that business and letting somebody else run it. And once I did, it's kind of scary because I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money on the table here. Like, I don't know about this coaching thing. I don't know what I'm doing here. But like any good entrepreneur, you build a parachute on the way down. And sold that company and just, like, went full force for the last 5 years in coaching. Like I said, started with a couple of my fraternity brothers and some other people that I knew, and then just went from word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth, and it quickly became what it is.
So, what is the day one mindset? What is that?
It's a 5 point framework that I created so that anybody can make their imagination their reality. And I'm a firm believer that your reality should be a reflection of your dreams. Like, you're not having all these desires and dreams and hopes just for, giggles and nonsense. Like, these are the things that seem bigger than us for a reason, because those are the exact things that we're meant to realize. And it's a way to better communicate with yourself and to co-create your life with God in a real practical way. It's simple and it's repeatable.
So could you walk us through a version of that so that we know what that framework looks like?
Well, the first big pillar of it is self-talk. Like how you talk to yourself all day matters so much. And you are going to be the person that you talk to the most your entire life. Like you're talking to yourself whether your people are around or not. And like once you really observe how you talk to yourself and decide to use certain words in certain ways, you start to believe certain things. You start to imagine certain things. And you start to see solutions to things that you didn't know were even possible before. And it gives you those types of clarity, that mental clarity, so that you can walk in a chosen direction rather than just hoping that your circumstances add up. And eventually, like we have a phrase in my coaching, and it's just simply of course. Like you start to do things of like, oh, of course I got that good deal. Oh, of course that person I was thinking about called me. Of course, I got that free upgrade. Of course, because you realize that you're moving the pieces of the puzzle in your life for the first time.
All right. So self-talk, I'm 100% with you on that. Self-talk is a key because it stems from what we're telling ourselves. And I believe in auto-suggestion, which you're probably familiar with. What we
Yeah.
say to ourselves over and over again, we begin to believe, and our physical reality becomes to manifest what it is that we've been telling ourselves. So what's the second part of this?
The second part is imagination, because the words that you're saying to yourself, they're going to start to create certain images in your mind. And a lot of people say like, oh yeah, I want this or I want that. And that's really, I think, a negative statement, because like your brain hears I don't have. Like if you want something, you want it because you don't have it. But rather like using words like I see myself. Now your brain and your body and your person is like, I can get behind that. And like you start to give yourself different images to work with. And the third pillar is what you're going for rather than how I'm going to get it. And I think it's more impactful to focus on what you're going for and the clearness of that and seeing yourself do that. And it's a lot easier to pursue it. And after that, there's number four is only solutions. And I know that sounds far fetched, especially, from, the technical difficulties that you've experienced today. You're like, do I have solutions? Like, I'm noticing a lot of problems here. Um, but the law of opposites is always in effect. If you can identify a problem, there has to be a solution there waiting. And like anything else, like you said, auto suggestion, if I'm constantly saying I only have solutions, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for solutions to implement rather than problems to solve. And it's a small tweak, but it's a real powerful one. And the closer is gratitude. I mean, everybody knows that a grateful person is a lot easier to be around, and you're a lot less stressed, a lot more clear headed. And I always say, if you know the direction you want to go in, use a framework, self talk to gratitude. If you don't know where you're going because your mind's full of just too much stuff, start with gratitude and go the other way around, because that will allow things to reveal themselves in the right way until you get down to that self talk and to really solidify everything that you're doing.
So you built a successful clothing brand. You ended up selling that. You did that while being a quadriplegic in a wheelchair, managing the adversity that comes with that. And all of us who are totally able-bodied folks that we take for granted the fact that we can walk and that we can use our hands to open doors and move around. We don't think about what it's like for someone who doesn't have that. Yet here you are, succeeded in spite of that. Hardship was your precursor to glory, and you've sold that brand, and now you're building a successful coaching business. So who is it that you're working with in your coaching business?
About 80% of my clients right now are in real estate in some capacity, from agents to investors. And I think it's partly because it's a real detail oriented business and can be high stress and risky at times, hoping you get the right tenants, hoping, deals go through and things like that. And also just a lot of business people in general, lawyers, entrepreneurs, people in engineering, people that are really looking to do things that other people don't see as possible just yet. Like they have these high hopes and these high goals, and the whole, positive self-talk and YouTube videos is just not enough. They're just like, I need something more. And those people come around, and I help them create their imagination.
Well, you've written 3 books. Tell us a little bit about those books.
The books started with the conversations I was having with God over these years. Like the book drops, drops, is an acronym for Daily Real Optimistic Power Statements. And I always say that, wherever you are, you didn't get there all at once. You got there a drop at a time. So in order to get to a new place, you have to also get there a drop at a time. If you're trying to do too much information too fast, it's going to be overload and it's going to feel overwhelming. And you'll probably just give it up because you're like, nah, like my mind's doing too much. I can't do that. But the great thing about my books is like every page says at the top, day one. So it's like, all right, well, if today's day one, then I can't get behind. It's like, all right, well, I'm just going to focus on this today. Oh, this is a hardship's a precursor to glory. And then it gives you the time to reflect and even write down your own ideas. In the second book on that is in the drop series, but it's drops for quantum leapers. So it's like now that you've gotten some momentum, you can implement these phrases and these questions into your life to really catapult you even faster. And the third book is the superhero training journal that, not everybody's ready for coaching. Not everybody's willing to do all that, but you can implement these four pillars that are in the training journal to really understand how high achievers, aka superheroes, see hardship and to see difficulty, and even know that, like, hey, we feel reluctant too. We feel scared too. I also don't know what I'm doing. However, I have these things and these pillars and these habits and these relationships that actually give me that upper hand so that I can do.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur running multiple businesses, effective communication is critical for me. I've tried all kinds of outreach tools over the years, but none have compared to Dubb when it comes to driving real results, and that's D-U-B-B. I was one of Dubb's first users. I think it was like 7 years ago when they first launched, and I've been a loyal customer ever since. Dubb has completely transformed my prospecting, my client communication strategy, and here's why. Dubb makes it simple to record personal video messages and share them across email, SMS, social media, and more. And this brings back the face-to-face connection that's missing from most digital outreach. And what happens is my prospects instantly feel more engaged when they can put my face to my name. I end up building a stronger relationship faster by incorporating these video messaging into my workflow. Dubb also provides tracking and analytics so I can see exactly who engages with my videos and how they respond to them. Their automation and their CRM features help me nurture leads and close more deals. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right, as entrepreneurs. So after using Dubb for years, I absolutely can't recommend them enough. I mean, Ruben, those guys over there are phenomenal. I love Darius. They're all great guys. It's become an invaluable tool that I depend upon to run my businesses efficiently. And if you want to boost your outreach and see amazing results like I have, head over to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. That's D-U-B-B. And you can try it completely for free. No credit card required. You get the first 50% off your first 2 months, by the way, if you use my link. You need to take your prospecting to the next level with video messaging from Dubb. They're my go-to sales communication platform for nearly 7 years and counting. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. Try it for free, no credit card required, and you'll get 50% off your first 2 months as well.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
What seems impossible to so many.
What does the P stand for? Daily Realistic Optimistic.
Daily Real Optimistic Power Statements.
Power statements. Okay, so drops. Daily, real, optimistic power statements. This goes to the first part of your framework, which is self-talk. It's these powerful, realistic statements that we're saying to ourselves. So as you work with your clients on this, what are you seeing is the biggest challenge or hardship they have to move through to embrace the success that they're possible and capable of?
One of them is you quickly realize, because I don't even say, hey, do this just yet. The first thing I say is just observe. Just listen to that voice, that story that's going on in your head. And they hear some pretty interesting things like, whoa, I'm way angrier than I thought. Like, whoa, that's me? And like, yeah, that's you. And once they start to change their self-talk, they realize, like, wait a second. If I'm saying these things and I didn't realize, now I'm going to say these things on purpose and just watch how they feel totally different. Like, whoa, I feel way more confident. Wait a second. And even just noticing that they don't always have to be the actor, they can be the observer in their own story. Like I had plenty of clients in the Chicago area that had extreme road rage. And, after like a week working with me, they're like, wait a second, the drivers will never get better, but I just don't care anymore. And that's like, it's moments like that that they realize that, wait a second, I'm getting back some of my power. And I'm a firm believer that, like, like the peace that surpasses understanding that we're called to receive, as followers of God here, that you can have that peace regardless. And that peace is too expensive to give up. And they start to notice those types of things, which in turn lets them know, like, wait a second, if I can control that seemed so far outside of me and that was controlling me, what else can I control?
Man, what do you tell your clients or potential clients? Probably better than clients, because if they're clients, they at least bought into it. But what do you
Yeah,
tell a potential client who says, "Man, this self-talk thing is hogwash. This is I'm good enough and doggone it, people like me. That's bull crap." Like
yeah.
what do you tell people when they have that idea?
We all know somebody who said something that got them in trouble. So if you don't think self-talk, the conversation that you're having matters, really? We all know the stories of people that, like, what they say is like, dude, why are you saying that? Stop it. And we all know the opposite. If somebody said something to us that made us feel like we were superheroes.
Yeah.
That coach said that one word and it's like, yep, I got it, coach. I'm there. Like seeing your parents come to the ball game and they clap and say, like hit a home run. They call your name and you're just like, I feel like I'm on cloud nine. And even like us as believers, like God says, I know your name. I know your name. I know everything about you. And to feel that recognition. And it's like even with us, like it says, in the beginning was the Word was with and was God. I'm like, so if words don't matter, then come on now. Come on now. They do. Stop it. Stop fooling yourself. And it's like
Well,
obvious stuff like that, you can't deny it. You're like, yeah, I do. I do. I get it.
I think we're told in Scripture that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And I think we don't pay attention to how important our words are, understanding how they can lead us in certain directions. What we say has consequences, and this happens in self-talk. It happens in the way we talk to kids or to spouses, to our parents. So let me ask you: after all, this is the Root of All Success show.
Hmm.
What do you believe has been the key for you, Milan, in becoming successful?
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Being able, and I always say it's not about having the best idea right now. It's can you stick it out long enough to prove it? And I was saying from July 2nd, 2000, like, no, I'm going to walk again. And it happened in August of 2018. It's like, told you, like, yeah, I told you, but it's like, can you stick it out long enough? And I think it's like once you start to do that, then you're not concerned with how long it takes because you're not betting on the circumstance, you're just betting on yourself. And I
Yeah.
just began to bet on myself so much so that, like, not knowing was not a good enough reason. Pain was not a good enough reason. Hey, your hands don't work. So what? Good, not a good enough reason. It's like I have less and less excuses than ever, and that's such a win for me.
So, how do you define success?
For me, success is accepting God's plan for me and having that be clear enough for me to act on it.
Hmm. Well, by that definition, do you consider yourself successful?
All caps, heck yeah. Like,
I love it. I love it. Well, let me ask you, super coach, the superhero coach, Lord Milan, how do you like? Let's distill this into a simple coaching piece of advice for the listeners. So, what I want you to do, you can't talk about perseverance because you already talked about that. We're going to leave that off the table. But if you were going to
okay.
give an idea of advice to someone who's listening to this show and they're going through hardship, and perseverance is understood. We've got that. But what else? What other piece of advice would you give to the listener?
If you treat today like it matters, then it will. And I think a lot of times we're so concerned with the big moments, right? The graduation, the marriage, the car, the baby, the job, the next deal. But we often discount the details. But your life is 99% details and 1% big moments. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's way more random Tuesdays than there are Friday nights, right? And it's like when you treat the details like they matter, when you treat what you're doing like it matters, you do more on purpose. You do feel so much more accomplished because you're keeping your promises to yourself. Your confidence goes up, your expectation goes up, and you start to appreciate so many more things. Like I'm appreciative of so many details, and I know this to be true because when I realized I can write again left-handed because my left side came back first, but I'm like, well, sweet, that's one more thing, So like realizing that the details matter way more than you think, and when you treat them like they matter, then your whole life will.
Well, Milan, it's an honor to have you on the show to talk about your story. I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word today. I want to first say, though, thank you for being transparent and honest and just sharing your story. I don't think many of us know people who've gone through an accident like you that affected the rest of your life and becoming quadriplegic and then fighting back to get back your movement and ability to walk and write. Congratulations on all your success. So what would you like to say? I'll give you the last word today in our show.
Hardship is a precursor to glory. And when we think about the stories and the movies and everything that means the most to us, it's the people that go through things that we respect the most, that we want to emulate, that we want to be like. So the next time like you find yourself in a storm, in a hardship, just know that like, hey, sticking it out is worthwhile because this is a precursor to glory. Like God's not mad at you, God's not punishing you with these hardships. And when you look at them that way, then it's so much easier to capitalize on it. Because just like me and you, like we're all benefiting from somebody else's story, somebody else's insights, and somebody's counting on yours. So it's like when you stick it out with the right attitude, then it's amazing what you can do and the legacy that you can provide for other people. And while you may never know the people that benefit from it, somebody definitely is. Because I'm definitely reading books by people that aren't around anymore. And thank God that they took the time to write it down.
Milan, thank you for being on the show today. For our listeners out there, go to day1mindset.com. That's day1mindset.com to connect with Lord Milan, or you can email him at the day1mindset@gmail.com. Or you can see him on YouTube at I Am Lord Milan. That's Milan. But again, big thanks. Congratulations on all your success, man. I really, really appreciate you being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, listeners, thank you for tuning in for another wonderful episode and conversation with somebody. I love this show because I get to talk to so many different people, and there's no one specific topic that we're talking about today. We talked about this one concept that hardship is a precursor to glory. And listen, no matter what you've gone through, bankruptcy, divorce, your kids leaving, your parents disowning you, whatever those issues have been in your life, just know that hardship is a precursor to glory, that something better is coming. So perseverance has been the key to his success, as we talked about here in the show. And also understand that the details matter. Every day is day one. So you're never behind. Just keep working. Watch your self-talk. So we look at those 5 things that he talked about. Self-talk. Watch your self-talk. Number 2, what are you imagining? What are you imaging in your mind about what your reality is? Number 3, what are you going for versus how you're going to get it? Pay attention to the what. 4, focus on solutions, only solutions. Just focus on the solutions. And 5th, make sure you're doing it with an attitude of gratitude. So again, big thanks to Lord Milan for being on the show. Go check him out at day1mindset.com. And make sure you listen to the voiceover guy here at the end. He's got something special to offer you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed or hit that bell icon on YouTube to get notified when we release new content, please make sure you do that. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you are, thank you for listening. It would mean a lot to me if you take a minute just to leave a review. That is a big opportunity for us to get in front of more people, the more reviews that we have. So thank you for listening. As always, I am the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Attention business owners. Attention business owners. Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. cut your daily operations time in half, improve your quality of life, and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.